Serafina stood at the edge of the garden path. Her fingers twisted around the stem of a white rose. The petals felt soft. Too soft, like they might fall apart if she held them too long. 2 years had passed since the worst day of her life. 2 years since her younger sister, Vivian, had walked into the parlor wearing Serafina's engagement ring. Serafina could still see it. The way Vivian's hand had trembled, the way her cheeks had been flushed pink, the way her voice had been too quiet when she said, "Gregory and I are in love." Gregory, Serafina's fiancé, the man she had planned to marry in 3 months, the man who had held her hand at her father's funeral, the man who had promised her forever. He had stood behind Vivian that day. His eyes had not met Serafina's. His mouth had been a tight line. He had said nothing. Their mother had gasped. She had pressed her handkerchief to her lips. She had looked at Serafina with wide eyes. "Darling, But Serafina had not waited to hear the rest. She had turned. She had walked out of the parlor. She had climbed the stairs to her room. She had locked the door. She had not cried. Not that day. Not the day after. Not even when the engagement was officially broken. When the letters were sent. When the whispers started in town. Poor Serafina. How humiliating. Her own sister. Serafina had learned to hold her head high. She had learned to smile when people stared. She had learned to pretend that her heart had not shattered into 1,000 pieces. But today was different. Today, Vivian and Gregory were getting married, and Serafina had been invited. The invitation had arrived 3 weeks ago. Cream-colored paper, gold lettering, elegant and perfect. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Miss Vivian Ashford and Mr. Gregory Carlyle." Serafina had stared at it for a long time. Her hands had not shaken. Her breath had stayed steady. Her mother had begged her not to go. "It will only hurt you, darling," she had said. Her voice had been soft, worried. "You don't have to put yourself through this." But Serafina had folded the invitation carefully. She had placed it on her desk. She had said, "I will go," because she needed to see it. She needed to see Vivian in a wedding dress. She needed to see Gregory at the altar. She needed to see them together. She needed to prove to herself that she could survive it. The church bells rang in the distance. Serafina smoothed down the front of her pale blue gown. It was simple, elegant, nothing like the lavender silk she had once chosen for her own wedding. That dress was still in her wardrobe, untouched, hidden behind other gowns. She had not been able to look at it. Not yet. Serafina walked slowly toward the church. The path was lined with white flowers, roses, lilies, baby's breath. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. People were already gathering outside, women in pastel gowns, men in dark coats. Everyone smiled. Everyone whispered. Serafina kept her chin up. She kept her face calm. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Inside the church, the air smelled like candle wax and roses. Serafina slipped into a pew near the back. She did not want to sit too close. She did not want to see too much. But she could see enough. The altar was decorated with white ribbons. Candles flickered on every surface. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows. It painted the floor in shades of red and gold and blue. It was beautiful. Serafina's chest tightened. This was supposed to be her wedding. This church, these flowers, this light. She had dreamed of this day for so long, and now it belonged to someone else. The guests filled the pews quickly. Laughter echoed softly. People hugged. They kissed cheeks. They talked about the weather and the flowers and how beautiful everything looked. Serafina sat alone. No one approached her. No one met her eyes. She was a ghost in the corner, a reminder of something everyone wanted to forget. But then the doors at the back of the church opened, and a man stepped inside. Serafina's breath caught. He was tall, broad-shouldered. His dark hair was slightly too long. It brushed the collar of his black coat. His jaw was sharp. His eyes were pale grey, cold, unreadable. He moved like he owned the room. People turned to look at him. Whispers started immediately. "Is that the Duke of Ashcroft? What is he doing here?" Seraphina had heard of him. Everyone had. Duke Thorne Ashcroft. A man who rarely left his estate. A man who had inherited his title at 20. A man who was known for being cold, distant, untouchable. He had never married. He had never courted anyone publicly. He had never attended social events unless absolutely necessary. And now he was here, at Vivian's wedding. But why? Thorne's eyes swept over the church. He did not smile. He did not nod at anyone. He simply moved forward, and then his gaze landed on Seraphina. For a moment, everything stopped. His eyes locked onto hers. They did not waver. They did not soften. Seraphina's heart pounded. She did not know him. She had never met him. She had only heard stories. But something in his gaze made her skin prickle. Like he saw her. Really saw her. Not the woman who had been left behind. Not the woman who had lost everything. Just her. Seraphina looked away first. Her hands clenched in her lap. She did not know why he was staring at her. She did not want to know. The music started. Soft, gentle, a harp and a violin. Everyone stood. Seraphina stood too. Her legs felt weak. The doors at the back of the church opened again, and Vivian appeared. She looked like a dream. Her gown was white silk. It flowed around her like water. Lace covered her shoulders. Her veil was long and delicate. Her dark hair was pinned with pearls. She was beautiful. Seraphina had always known that Vivian was beautiful, but today she looked like an angel. Vivian walked slowly down the aisle. Her arm was linked with their uncle's. Her smile was soft. Her eyes were bright. She looked happy. Seraphina's throat tightened. She had wanted Vivian to be happy once, when they were younger, when they had been sisters who laughed together, who shared secrets, who braided each other's hair. But that had been a long time ago. Now, Vivian was marrying the man Seraphina had loved, and Seraphina did not know how to forgive that. Vivian reached the altar. Gregory stood there waiting. He wore a dark coat. His hair was combed back. His smile was wide. He looked at Vivian like she was the only person in the world. Seraphina's hands trembled. She remembered when he had looked at her that way, before everything had changed. The priest began to speak. His voice was calm, steady. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." Seraphina barely heard the words. Her mind was too loud. Her heart was too heavy. She wanted to leave. She wanted to run. But her feet stayed planted to the floor. The priest continued. "If any person here knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace." Silence. Seraphina closed her eyes. This was it. The moment when it would all become real. When Vivian and Gregory would be married. When Seraphina would have to accept that it was over. That she had lost. But then, a voice rang out. Clear, strong, unwavering. "I object." Every head in the church turned. Seraphina's eyes snapped open. The voice had come from the back of the church, from Duke Thorne Ashcroft. He stood in the aisle. His hands were at his sides. His expression was calm, but his eyes were fierce. The entire church erupted into whispers. Did he just... What is he doing? Why would he object? Vivian's face went pale. Her hands clutched her bouquet so tightly that the stems bent. Gregory stepped forward. His jaw was tight. "Your Grace, this is highly inappropriate. You have no right." "I have every right," Thorne said. His voice cut through the air like a blade. "Because this marriage is built on a lie." The church was silent now. No one moved. No one breathed. Serafina's heart hammered in her chest. Her hands gripped the edge of the pew in front of her. What was happening? Thorn walked slowly down the aisle. His boots echoed against the stone floor. Every eye followed him. He stopped a few feet from the altar. His gaze was fixed on Gregory. 2 years ago, Thorn said, you broke off your engagement to Miss Serafina Ashford. Serafina's stomach dropped. Why was he talking about her? Gregory's face flushed. That is none of your concern, Your Grace. It is my concern, Thorn said coldly, when the reason for that broken engagement was based on deceit. Vivian's eyes widened. She looked at Gregory. What is he talking about? Gregory did not answer. Thorn's gaze shifted to Vivian. His expression softened slightly. Miss Vivian, do you know why your sister's engagement ended? Vivian's voice was small. Because Gregory and I fell in love. Is that what he told you? Thorn asked. Vivian nodded slowly. Thorn's jaw tightened. Then he lied to you. The whispers exploded again. Serafina felt dizzy. Her vision blurred at the edges. This could not be happening. This was not real. Gregory stepped forward. His face was red now, angry. You have no proof of any wrongdoing, Your Grace. This is slander. Is it? Thorn's voice was quiet, deadly. Then explain this. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his coat pocket. He held it up. This, Thorn said, is a contract, signed by you, Mr. Carlyle, and a gentleman named Lord Whitmore. It states that you would receive a significant sum of money if you ended your engagement to Miss Serafina Ashford and married her sister instead. The church erupted into chaos. Serafina's legs gave out. She sank back onto the pew. No, 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 no! Gregory had been paid to leave her? Vivian's bouquet fell from her hands. It hit the floor with a soft thud. Her voice was shaking. Gregory, is that true? Gregory's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at Thorn, then at Vivian, then at the crowd. It's not what it sounds like, he said quickly. I was going to pay it back. I was going to... You were going to what? Vivian's voice cracked. Tears filled her eyes. You were paid to marry me? No, Gregory said desperately. I love you, Vivian, I do. The money didn't matter, Then why did you take it? Vivian's voice was rising now. Her hands shook. Why did you break her heart for money? Gregory had no answer. Serafina's mind was spinning. Lord Whitmore. She knew that name. He was a business associate of her late father's, a man who had always been too friendly, too interested in their family's affairs. But why would he pay Gregory to leave her? What did he gain from that? Thorn's voice cut through her thoughts. Lord Whitmore wanted access to your family's estate, Miss Serafina. Your father's will stated that the estate would pass to you upon your marriage. Whitmore believed that if you married Mr. Carlyle, he could manipulate Carlyle into selling the land to him. Serafina's breath stopped. But, Thorn continued, when he realized that Mr. Carlyle had no intention of doing so, he changed his plan. He paid Carlyle to leave you and marry your sister instead. That way the estate would remain in your hands, unmarried and vulnerable, and Whitmore could pressure you into selling directly. The pieces fell into place. The letters she had received after the engagement ended, the visits from Lord Whitmore, the offers to help her manage the estate. He had been circling her like a vulture. Vivian was crying now. Her veil had fallen back. Her face was streaked with tears. You used me, she whispered. She looked at Gregory like she did not recognize him. You used me to hurt my sister. No, Gregory said. His voice was desperate, panicked. I love you, Vivian. I swear I do. The money was just... Just what? Vivian's voice broke. Just an added bonus. She tore the ring from her finger. She threw it at him. It bounced off his chest and clattered to the floor. We're done, Vivian said. and then she turned and ran. The church exploded into noise again. People stood, they talked over each other, they pointed, they gasped. Gregory stood frozen at the altar. His face was pale. His hands hung at his sides. Serafina could not move. She could not think. She could only stare at Thorn. He had done this. He had stopped the wedding. He had revealed the truth. But why? Why did he care? Thorn turned slowly. His eyes found Serafina's, and for the first time she saw something in his gaze that was not cold. It was gentle, almost kind. He walked toward her. The crowd parted for him. When he reached her pew, he stopped. "Miss Serafina," he said quietly. Serafina's throat was dry. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you do this?" Thorn's jaw tightened. "Because you deserved the truth." "But you don't even know me." His eyes held hers. "I know enough." And then he held out his hand. "Come with me," he said. "You don't need to stay here." Serafina looked at his hand, then at his face. She did not understand. She did not know him. But something in her chest pulled tight, and slowly she placed her hand in his. Thorn's hand was warm, strong. His fingers closed gently around hers. He led her down the aisle. People stared. They whispered. But Thorn did not look at them. He only looked ahead. Serafina followed him. Her legs felt weak. Her mind was still reeling, but his hand kept her steady. They stepped outside into the sunlight. The air was fresh, cool. It filled Serafina's lungs. A carriage waited at the edge of the path, black and polished. The horses were calm. Thorn opened the door. He looked at her. "You don't have to come with me, but if you stay here, they will ask you questions. They will stare. They will want answers you don't have yet." Serafina looked back at the church. She could hear the noise inside, the chaos. She did not want to face it. Not yet. She climbed into the carriage. Thorn followed. He closed the door. He knocked twice on the roof. The carriage lurched forward. They rode in silence for several minutes. Serafina stared out the window. The trees blurred past. The road stretched ahead. She did not know where they were going. She did not know why she had trusted him, but she had. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was soft. "How did you know?" Thorn leaned back against the seat. His expression was unreadable. "I've been investigating Lord Whitmore for months. He's been involved in several fraudulent land deals. When I discovered the contract with Carlyle, I looked into the details. Your name appeared." Serafina's chest tightened. "So this was just part of your investigation?" Thorn's eyes met hers. "At first, yes. And now?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Now it's personal." Serafina did not understand. "Why? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." Thorn's jaw clenched. He looked away. "My sister was deceived once, by a man who wanted her inheritance. She married him before I could stop it. He took everything from her, and then he left." Serafina's breath caught. "Is she?" "She's alive," Thorn said quietly. "But she's not the same. She doesn't smile anymore. She doesn't trust anyone. Not even me." His voice was rough, painful. Serafina's heart ached. "I'm sorry." Thorn shook his head. "When I saw what happened to you, I couldn't let it go. I couldn't let another woman be destroyed by men like Carlyle and Whitmore." Serafina's throat tightened. "So you stopped the wedding?" "I stopped the lie," Thorn corrected. He looked at her again. His eyes were softer now. "You deserved better than that." The carriage slowed. Serafina looked out the window. They were no longer on the main road. The trees were thicker here. The path was narrow. "Where are we?" she asked. "My estate," Thorn said. "Ashcroft Manor. You'll be safe here." Serafina's pulse quickened. I can't stay with you. People will talk, they'll— Let them talk, Thorn said simply. You've spent 2 years living under their judgment. Maybe it's time you stopped caring what they think. Serafina stared at him. He was right. She had spent so long trying to be perfect, trying to hold her head high, trying to pretend she was fine. But she was not fine. She was tired. And maybe, just maybe, she did not have to pretend anymore. Ashcroft Manor was enormous. The stone walls rose high into the sky. Ivy crawled up the sides. Tall windows reflected the sunlight. The gardens were wild but beautiful. Roses grew in thick bushes. A fountain stood in the center of the courtyard. It was nothing like Serafina's family estate. That place had always been neat, controlled, perfect. This place felt alive. Thorn helped her out of the carriage. His hand lingered on hers for just a moment longer than necessary. Come, he said. I'll show you to your room. Inside, the manor was just as grand. High ceilings, dark wood, paintings lined the walls, chandeliers hung from the ceiling. But it was not cold. There were flowers on the tables, books stacked in corners. A fire crackled in the hearth. It felt like a home. A butler appeared. He was older. His expression was kind. Your Grace, he said with a small bow. Prepare the East Wing guest room, Thorn said, and send for tea. The butler nodded. He glanced at Serafina with curiosity but said nothing. Thorn led Serafina up a wide staircase. The walls were lined with portraits, men and women with serious faces, with pale eyes, with dark hair. Thorn's family. Do you live here alone? Serafina asked. Mostly, Thorn said. My sister visits sometimes, but she prefers the countryside. It's quieter. Serafina nodded. They reached a door at the end of a long hallway. Thorn opened it. The room was beautiful. A large bed sat in the center. The blankets were soft and cream-colored. A window overlooked the gardens. A writing desk sat in the corner. Fresh flowers had been placed on the nightstand. This is yours, Thorn said, for as long as you need it. Serafina's throat tightened. I don't understand. Why are you doing this? Thorn stepped closer. His eyes searched hers. Because no one helped my sister when she needed it, and I won't make that mistake again. His voice was steady, but there was something in his eyes, something raw. Serafina's heart pounded. Thank you. Thorn nodded. He turned to leave, but Serafina's voice stopped him. Your Grace? He paused. He looked back. What happens now? She asked. Thorn's gaze was serious. Now we make sure Whitmore and Carlyle pay for what they've done. That evening, Serafina sat in the drawing room. A fire crackled in the hearth. Rain tapped softly against the windows. She held a cup of tea in her hands. The warmth seeped into her fingers. Thorn sat across from her. He had changed into a simpler coat. His hair was slightly mussed. He looked less like a duke and more like a man. Tell me about your estate, he said. Serafina blinked. Why? Because Whitmore wants it, Thorn said, and I need to understand why. Serafina set down her teacup. She folded her hands in her lap. It's not large, but the land is valuable. My father invested in railways. The tracks run through the eastern fields. Anyone who owns the estate controls access to that route. Thorn nodded slowly. And Whitmore wants to sell that access. I assume so, Serafina said. He's made several offers to buy the land, but I've refused every time. Good, Thorn said. Keep refusing. Serafina frowned. But what if he tries something else? What if he— He won't, Thorn interrupted. His voice was firm. Because I'm going to make sure he doesn't. Serafina looked at him. How? Thorn leaned forward. His elbows rested on his knees. His eyes were intense. Whitmore is a coward. He hides behind contracts and bribes. But if his reputation is destroyed, he has nothing. So that's what we'll do. We'll expose him. How? Serafina asked again. Thorn's mouth curved into a small, dangerous smile, by making him think he's won. Over the next few days, Serafina learned more about Thorn. He woke early, he walked the estate every morning, he checked on the tenants, he spoke to the groundskeepers, he reviewed ledgers in his study. He was nothing like Gregory. Gregory had always been charming, smooth. He had known what to say to make people like him. But Thorn was different. He was quiet, serious. He did not smile often, but when he did, it was real. And he listened. When Serafina spoke, he did not interrupt. He did not dismiss her. He simply listened. It was strange, and it was wonderful. One afternoon, Serafina found him in the garden. He was kneeling beside a rose bush. His sleeves were rolled up. His hands were dirty. He was trimming the dead branches. Serafina stopped a few feet away. "I didn't know dukes gardened." Thorn glanced up. His lips twitched. "Most don't." "Then why do you?" He looked back at the roses. "Because my mother loved these gardens. Before she died, she made me promise to take care of them." Serafina's chest tightened. "How old were you?" 10. Her breath caught. "That's so young." Thorn nodded. He did not look at her. "My father died a year later. My sister and I were sent to live with our uncle. He didn't care about us. He only cared about the title. When I turned 20, I inherited everything. I came back here, and I've been taking care of it ever since." Serafina sat down on the stone bench nearby. "That's a lot of responsibility." "It is," Thorn said. He stood. He wiped his hands on a cloth. "But it's mine, and I won't let anyone take it from me." His eyes met hers, and Serafina realized he was not just talking about the estate, he was talking about everything he loved. That night, Serafina could not sleep. She lay in bed. She stared at the ceiling. Her mind would not quiet. She thought about the wedding, about Vivian's tears, about Gregory's pale face. She thought about Thorn's hand in hers, about the way he had looked at her, about the way he had said, "You deserved better than that." She thought about the contract, about Lord Whitmore, about the lies, and she thought about the future. What would happen now? Would she return to her estate? Would she face the whispers and the stares? Or would she stay here, with Thorn? A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Miss Serafina?" Thorn's voice was quiet, careful. Serafina sat up. "Come in." The door opened. Thorn stepped inside. He held a candle. The light flickered across his face. "I saw your light was still on," he said. "Are you all right?" Serafina nodded slowly. "I just can't stop thinking." Thorn set the candle on the nightstand. He sat on the edge of the bed, not too close, but close enough. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Serafina looked at him. His eyes were gentle, patient. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. "I don't know where I belong anymore." Thorn's jaw tightened. "You belong wherever you choose." "But what if I choose wrong?" "Then you choose again," Thorn said simply. "You're allowed to change your mind, Serafina. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to start over." Serafina's throat tightened. "Is that what you did?" Thorn nodded. "When I came back here, I had nothing. No parents, no guidance, just a title and a crumbling estate. I had to build everything from the ground up. And I made mistakes, a lot of them. But I kept going, and eventually, I found my way." Serafina's eyes burned. "I'm scared." "I know," Thorn said softly, "but you're stronger than you think." He reached out. His hand covered hers, and this time, he did not let go. A week later, Thorn's plan was ready. He had sent a letter to Lord Whitmore. It claimed that Serafina was ready to sell the estate, that she was desperate, that she needed the money. It was a lie, but Whitmore believed it. He had written back immediately. He had agreed to meet. He had suggested a location, a private club in London. Thorn had accepted. Now, Serafina sat in the carriage beside him. Her hands were clenched in her lap. Her heart was racing. "Are you sure this will work?" she asked. Thorn looked at her. His expression was calm, confident. "Yes. But what if he realizes it's a trap?" "He won't," Thorn said, "because he's too arrogant to see it." Serafina wanted to believe him. She had to believe him. The club was elegant. Dark wood, leather chairs, dim lighting. Men in expensive coats sat in corners, smoking cigars and drinking brandy. Thorn led Serafina through the room. Eyes followed them. Whispers started. But Thorn ignored them. He stopped at a private room in the back. He knocked once. A voice called out, "Enter." Thorn opened the door. Lord Whitmore sat behind a large desk. He was older. His hair was gray. His face was lined. But his eyes were sharp. He smiled when he saw Serafina. "Miss Ashford, how lovely to see you." Serafina's stomach turned, but she forced a smile. "Lord Whitmore." Whitmore's gaze shifted to Thorn. His smile faltered slightly. "Your Grace, I was not expecting you." "I am Miss Ashford's advisor," Thorn said smoothly. "She asked me to accompany her." Whitmore's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. "Of course. Please, sit." They sat. Whitmore folded his hands on the desk. "Now, Miss Ashford, I understand you're ready to discuss the sale of your estate." Serafina nodded. "I am." "Excellent," Whitmore said. His smile returned. "I've prepared a contract. The terms are very generous, I assure you." He slid a piece of paper across the desk. Serafina picked it up. Her hands trembled slightly, but she did not read it, because she did not need to. Thorn leaned forward. "Before we proceed, Lord Whitmore, there's something I'd like to discuss." Whitmore frowned. "What is that, Your Grace?" Thorn pulled a folded paper from his coat. He set it on the desk. "This contract, the one you signed with Mr. Gregory Carlyle, the one that paid him to break his engagement to Miss Ashford." Whitmore's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said quickly. "Don't you?" Thorn's voice was cold, dangerous. "Because I have evidence, signed documents, witness statements, bank records, everything I need to prove that you manipulated Miss Ashford's personal life for your own gain." Whitmore's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at Serafina. You knew?" Serafina's voice was steady. "I know everything." Whitmore's hands clenched into fists. "This is absurd. You have no proof that would hold up in court." Thorn smiled. It was not a kind smile. "I don't need a court. I only need the papers. One word to the press and your reputation will be destroyed. No one will do business with you. No one will trust you. You'll lose everything." Whitmore's face turned red. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," Thorn said. Silence filled the room. Whitmore stared at Thorn, then at Serafina. His jaw worked. His hands shook. Finally, he said, "What do you want?" Thorn leaned back. "A signed confession, admitting to everything, the bribe, the manipulation, the fraud, and a promise that you will never contact Miss Ashford again." Whitmore's eyes blazed. "And if I refuse?" "Then I go to the papers," Thorn said simply. "Tonight." Whitmore's breath came fast, angry, but he knew he had lost. Slowly, he reached for a pen. 20 minutes later, Serafina and Thorn stepped out of the club. The night air was cool. The streets were quiet. Serafina's hands were still shaking, but this time it was not from fear. It was from relief. "It's over," she whispered. Thorn looked at her. "It's over." Serafina's eyes burned. She pressed her hand to her mouth. A sob broke free, and then she was crying. Thorn did not hesitate. He pulled her into his arms. He held her tightly. Serafina buried her face in his chest. She cried for everything she had lost, for everything she had survived, for everything she had been too afraid to feel. And Thorn held her through it all. They returned to Ashcroft Manor late that night. Serafina's eyes were red. Her body was exhausted, but her heart felt lighter than it had in years. Thorn walked her to her room. He paused at the door. "Get some rest," he said softly. Serafina nodded, but she did not move. She looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who had saved her, who had stood up for her, who had given her a place to heal. "Why did you do all of this?" she asked quietly. Thorn's jaw tightened. "I told you. My sister—" "No," Serafina interrupted. "That's not the only reason, is it?" Thorn was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "No, it's not." Serafina's heart pounded. "Then what is it?" Thorn stepped closer. His eyes were intense, vulnerable. "Because when I saw you sitting alone in that church," he said, "I saw someone who had been broken, someone who had been betrayed, someone who deserved better, and I couldn't walk away." His voice was rough, raw. "I couldn't walk away from you," he whispered. Serafina's breath caught. "I know we barely know each other," Thorn continued. "I know this is fast. I know you've been hurt. But I can't pretend I don't feel this." "Feel what?" Serafina's voice was barely audible. Thorn's hand lifted. His fingers brushed her cheek. "This. You." Serafina's eyes filled with tears. "I don't expect anything from you," Thorn said. "I just needed you to know." Serafina's hands trembled. She reached up. She covered his hand with hers. "I feel it too," she whispered. Thorn's breath stopped. "I don't understand it," Serafina said. "I don't know how it happened. But when I'm with you, I don't feel broken anymore. I feel whole." Thorn's eyes softened. "Serafina." She stepped closer. "I know it's fast. I know it's terrifying. But I don't want to run from it. Not this time." Thorn's hand slid into her hair. His thumb brushed her jaw. "Are you sure?" he asked. Serafina nodded. "I'm sure." And then he kissed her. The kiss was slow, gentle, like he was afraid she might break. But Serafina did not break. She leaned into him. Her hands gripped his coat. Her heart pounded. And for the first time in 2 years, she felt alive. When they pulled apart, Thorn rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Not just tonight. Stay." Serafina's eyes closed. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Okay," she breathed. "I'll stay." 3 weeks passed. Serafina had settled into life at Ashcroft Manor. She walked the gardens every morning. She read in the library every afternoon. She had dinner with Thorn every evening. They talked about everything, about their childhoods, about their fears, about their dreams. And slowly, carefully, they built something new, something real. But one morning everything changed. Serafina was in the drawing room when the butler entered. "Miss Serafina," he said, "you have a visitor." Serafina frowned. "Who?" The butler hesitated. "Your sister." Serafina's heart stopped. Vivian. Vivian stood in the entryway. She wore a simple grey dress. Her hair was loose. Her face was pale. She looked smaller than Serafina remembered. "Serafina," Vivian said softly. Her voice cracked. "Please, I need to talk to you." Serafina's chest tightened. She did not know what to say. She had not seen Vivian since the wedding, since the moment Vivian had thrown the ring at Gregory and run. "Please," Vivian whispered. Tears filled her eyes. "I know you have no reason to listen to me, but I'm begging you." Serafina looked at her sister, at the girl who had once been her best friend, at the girl who had stolen her fiancé. and she saw something she had not expected. She saw regret. "Come in," Serafina said quietly. They sat in the drawing room. A fire crackled softly. Vivian twisted her hands in her lap. She could not meet Serafina's eyes. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Serafina said nothing. "I didn't know," Vivian continued. Her voice broke. "I didn't know about the money. I didn't know Gregory was lying. I thought he loved me. I thought we were in love." A tear slipped down her cheek. "But it was all a lie," Vivian said. "And I destroyed everything. I destroyed us. I destroyed you. And I can never take that back." Serafina's throat tightened. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Vivian said. "I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry, and that I'll spend the rest of my life regretting what I did to you." Silence filled the room. Serafina looked at her sister, at the tears on her face, at the pain in her eyes. And she realized something. Vivian had been used too. Not in the same way, but used nonetheless. Gregory had manipulated her. He had made her believe she was special, that she was loved, and then he had left her with nothing. "I don't forgive you," Serafina said quietly. Vivian's face crumpled. "But," Serafina continued, "I don't hate you either." Vivian looked up. Hope flickered in her eyes. "What you did hurt me," Serafina said. "It broke me, and I'll never forget that. But I also know that you were lied to. You were manipulated, and I can't hold that against you forever." Vivian's hands trembled. "So, what does that mean?" Serafina took a breath. "It means that maybe, one day, we can try again. Not now, not today, but one day." Vivian's tears fell faster. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." After Vivian left, Serafina sat alone in the drawing room. Her heart felt heavy, but also lighter. She had not forgiven Vivian, not fully, but she had let go of some of the anger, and that was enough. Thorn found her there an hour later. He sat beside her. He took her hand. "Are you all right?" he asked. Serafina nodded. "I think so." Thorn squeezed her hand. "You're brave." Serafina smiled softly. "I learned from the best." Another month passed. Winter began to settle over the estate. Snow covered the gardens. The air turned cold. But inside Ashcroft Manor, everything was warm. Serafina had officially moved into the estate. She had brought her belongings from her family home. She had made the guest room her own. But more and more, she found herself in Thorn's study, or in the library, or in the garden, wherever he was, because being near him felt like home. One evening, Thorn asked her to meet him in the garden. Serafina wrapped herself in a thick cloak. She stepped outside. The snow crunched under her boots. The air was crisp and clean. Thorn stood near the fountain. He wore a dark coat. His breath misted in the cold air. He turned when he heard her approach. "You came," he said. Serafina smiled. "Of course I did." Thorn held out his hand. She took it. He led her to a stone bench. He brushed the snow off. They sat. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Thorn said, "I need to ask you something." Serafina's heart skipped. "What is it?" Thorn took a breath. His eyes were serious, intense. "When I first saw you in that church," he said, "I thought you were the saddest person I'd ever seen, but also the strongest. Because you were sitting there, facing the worst moment of your life, and you didn't run. You didn't hide. You stayed." Serafina's throat tightened. "And I realized something," Thorn continued. "I realized that I wanted to be the kind of person who stays too, who doesn't run, who doesn't hide. I wanted to be someone you could depend on." He reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small box. Serafina's breath stopped. Thorn opened the box. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant, a single diamond on a silver band. "I know we haven't known each other long," Thorn said. His voice was steady but soft. "I know you've been hurt. I know you're still healing. But I also know that I love you, and I don't want to waste another day pretending I don't." Serafina's eyes filled with tears. "Serafina Ashford," Thorn said, "will you marry me?" Serafina's hands covered her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She thought about Gregory, about the proposal she had accepted 2 years ago, about the promises that had been broken. She thought about the pain, the betrayal, the loneliness. But then she looked at Thorn, at the man who had stood up for her, who had fought for her, who had given her a place to heal, at the man who had never asked her to be anything other than herself. And she knew. "Yes," she whispered. Thorn's eyes widened. "Yes?" Serafina laughed through her tears. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." Thorn's face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. He stood. He pulled her to her feet. He kissed her, and Serafina kissed him back. The ring fit perfectly. Serafina looked down at it. The diamond sparkled in the moonlight. "It was my mother's," Thorn said softly. "I've been saving it, waiting for the right person." Serafina's heart swelled. "It's beautiful." Thorn cupped her face in his hands. "You're beautiful." Serafina smiled. "I love you." "I love you too," Thorn said. And they stood there in the snow, holding each other, as the world around them disappeared. 3 months later, Serafina and Thorn were married. The ceremony was small, intimate. Only close friends and family attended. Serafina wore a gown of ivory silk. Lace covered her shoulders. Her hair was pinned with white flowers. She looked like a dream. Thorn stood at the altar in a dark coat. His eyes never left her. When Serafina walked down the aisle, her heart was full. This was nothing like the wedding she had imagined 2 years ago. It was better. Because this time, she was marrying a man who truly loved her. A man who had fought for her. A man who had never given up on her. The priest began to speak. "Dearly beloved." Serafina barely heard the words. She only heard her heartbeat. She only saw Thorn. When it was time to say their vows, Thorn's voice was steady, strong. "I promise to stand by you," he said, "to protect you, to love you, for as long as I live." Serafina's voice was soft but clear. "I promise to trust you, to choose you, to love you, always." The priest smiled. "You may kiss the bride." And Thorn did. The reception was held in the manor's grand hall. Candles lit every surface. Flowers covered the tables. Music filled the air. Serafina danced with Thorn. His hand was warm on her waist. His eyes were soft. "Happy?" he asked. Serafina smiled. "So happy." He kissed her forehead. "Good." They danced until the music slowed, until the guests began to leave, until it was just the two of them. And then Thorn led her outside. The stars were bright. The air was cool. The garden was quiet. "I have something for you," Thorn said. Serafina frowned. "Another gift? You've already given me so much." Thorn smiled. He pulled a folded paper from his coat. Serafina took it. She unfolded it carefully. It was a deed to her family estate. "I bought it," Thorn said, "from the bank. They were going to auction it off to pay your father's debts, but I paid them off. The estate is yours again." Serafina's hands trembled. "Thorn, why?" "Because it's your home," Thorn said simply, "and I wanted you to have it. No strings, no conditions. It's yours." Serafina's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll let me visit sometimes," Thorn said with a small smile. Serafina laughed. She threw her arms around him. "You can visit whenever you want. You're my husband now." Thorn held her tightly. I am. And they stood there under the stars, holding each other as the world moved on without them. 1 year later, Serafina stood in the garden of Ashcroft Manor. The roses were in full bloom. The air smelled like summer. She held a book in her hands, but she was not reading. She was watching Thorn. He was kneeling beside a rose bush, just like the first time she had seen him in the garden. His sleeves were rolled up. His hands were dirty. But now, he was not alone. A little girl sat beside him. She had dark hair and pale grey eyes. She was 3 years old. Her name was Eleanor, and she was their daughter. "Papa, look!" Eleanor held up a flower. It was slightly crooked, but her smile was bright. Thorn smiled. "That's beautiful, Ellie." Eleanor giggled. She tucked the flower behind her ear. Serafina's heart swelled. This was her life now. A life filled with love, with laughter, with light. She thought about the woman she had been 2 years ago. The woman who had sat alone in a church, watching her sister marry her fiancé. That woman had been broken. But she had also been strong. Strong enough to survive. Strong enough to heal. Strong enough to love again. Thorn looked up. His eyes found Serafina's. He smiled. And Serafina smiled back. Because she knew now that heartbreak did not mean the end. Sometimes, it meant the beginning. A beginning she had never expected, but one she would not trade for anything. Thorn stood. He walked over to her. Eleanor ran ahead, chasing a butterfly. "What are you thinking about?" Thorn asked. Serafina looked at him, at the man who had saved her, who had loved her, who had given her a life she never thought she could have. "I'm thinking," Serafina said softly, "that I'm glad you objected." Thorn's eyes softened. He pulled her close. He kissed her forehead. "So am I," he whispered. And as the sun set over Ashcroft Manor, Serafina knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be, with the man who had fought for her, with the family she had built, with the love she had found in the most unexpected place. But somewhere, far away, in a small cottage by the sea, Vivian sat by a window. She watched the waves crash against the shore. She thought about her sister, about the life Serafina had built, and she smiled. Because Serafina had found happiness, and maybe one day Vivian would too. But for now, she was content to know that her sister was loved, that her sister was safe, that her sister had found her happy ending. And that was enough. 2 years after Serafina's wedding, a letter arrived at Ashcroft Manor. Serafina was in the library when the butler brought it to her. She recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from Vivian. Serafina's hands trembled slightly as she broke the seal. She unfolded the paper carefully. "Dearest Serafina, I hope this letter finds you well. I have thought about writing to you so many times over the past 2 years, but I never had the courage. I wanted to tell you that I have left England. I am living in France now, in a small village by the coast. It is quiet here, peaceful. I have opened a small bookshop. It is nothing grand, but it is mine. I think of you often. I think of the woman you have become, and I am so proud of you. I do not expect you to respond to this letter. I do not expect forgiveness. But I wanted you to know that I am happy, and that I hope, wherever you are happy too. With all my love, Vivian." Serafina read the letter 3 times. Her chest felt tight. Her eyes burned, but she did not cry. Instead, she folded the letter carefully. She placed it in her desk drawer, and then she sat down and wrote a response. "Dearest Vivian, I am glad to hear that you are well. I am glad to hear that you have found peace. I want you to know that I am happy. I have a husband who loves me, a daughter who fills my days with joy, a life that I never thought I could have. I do not know if I have fully forgiven you yet, but I am trying, and I think that is enough for now. If you ever wish to visit, you are welcome here. Not today, not tomorrow, but one day. Take care of yourself. With hope, Serafina." She sealed the letter, She handed it to the butler, and she knew that, one day, she and Vivian might find their way back to each other. But for now, this was enough. Thorn found her in the library an hour later. He sat beside her. He took her hand. "Are you all right?" he asked. Serafina nodded. "I am." Thorn studied her face. Then he kissed her knuckles. "You are the strongest person I know." Serafina smiled. "I learned from you." Thorn's eyes softened. "We learned from each other." And they sat there together, hand in hand, as the afternoon light streamed through the windows. 6 months later, news arrived that shocked everyone. Gregory Carlyle had been arrested. The charges were fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. It turned out that Gregory had not just taken money from Lord Whitmore, he had been involved in several other schemes. He had swindled investors, he had forged documents, he had lied to dozens of people, and now he was facing justice. Serafina read the news in the paper. She sat at the breakfast table, her tea growing cold. Thorn watched her carefully. "How do you feel?" Serafina was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I feel nothing." Thorn raised an eyebrow. "Nothing?" Serafina nodded. "I used to think I would feel satisfaction if something like this happened. I thought I would feel vindicated. But I don't. I just feel empty, like he doesn't matter anymore." Thorn reached across the table. He took her hand. "That's because he doesn't." Serafina looked at him, at the man who had become her everything. "You're right," she said softly. "He doesn't." And she meant it. Gregory Carlyle was a part of her past, a painful, ugly part. But he was not her future. Her future was here, with Thorn, with Eleanor, with the life they had built together. And that was all that mattered. Another year passed. Serafina and Thorn welcomed a second child, a son. They named him Edmund. He had Serafina's dark hair and Thorn's pale grey eyes. He was loud and strong and filled the manor with noise. Eleanor adored him. She would sit beside his cradle for hours, singing to him, telling him stories. Serafina watched her children with a full heart. She thought about the woman she had been 5 years ago, the woman who had believed her life was over, and she realized how wrong she had been. Her life had not ended. It had just begun. One evening, Thorn found her standing in the nursery. Edmund was asleep in his cradle. Eleanor was curled up on a chair, her favorite book in her lap. Thorn wrapped his arms around Serafina from behind. He rested his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Serafina leaned back against him. "I'm thinking about how different my life is now." "Good different or bad different?" Thorn asked. Serafina smiled. "Good. So good." Thorn kissed her temple. "I'm glad." They stood there in the quiet, holding each other as their children slept peacefully. And Serafina knew that this was what happiness looked like. Not perfection, not a fairy tale, but real, raw, beautiful. 5 years after Serafina's wedding, Vivian returned to England. She sent a letter ahead, asking if she could visit. Serafina had agreed. Now Vivian stood at the gates of Ashcroft Manor. She looked older, more tired, but also more at peace. Serafina walked down the path to meet her. Her heart pounded. This was the first time they had seen each other in 5 years. Vivian's eyes filled with tears when she saw Serafina. "You look happy." Serafina nodded. "I am." Vivian smiled. It was a sad, fragile smile. "I'm glad." They stood there for a moment, neither knowing what to say. Then Serafina said, "Would you like to come inside?" Vivian's face brightened. "I would love to." They sat in the drawing room. Tea was served. Eleanor peeked around the corner, curious about the stranger. "Eleanor," Serafina said gently, "this is your Aunt Vivian." Eleanor's eyes widened. She stepped forward slowly. "Hello." Vivian's eyes filled with tears again. "Hello, darling. You're so beautiful." Eleanor smiled shyly. Then she ran back to find her brother. Vivian looked at Serafina. "You have children?" Serafina nodded. "Two, Eleanor and Edmund." Vivian's hands trembled. "I'm so happy for you." "Thank you," Serafina said quietly. They talked for hours, about Vivian's life in France, about her bookshop, about the friends she had made, and about the regrets she still carried. "I will never forgive myself for what I did to you," Vivian said. Her voice was thick with emotion. "But I want you to know that I have spent every day trying to be better, trying to be the kind of person you deserved as a sister." Serafina's throat tightened. "I know you have." Vivian looked at her. "Does that mean, do you think you could ever forgive me?" Serafina was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I think I already have." Vivian's breath caught. "Really?" Serafina nodded. "It took time. It took healing. But yes, I forgive you." Vivian broke down in tears. She covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. Serafina stood. She walked over to her sister. She knelt down in front of her, and then she pulled Vivian into her arms. They stayed like that for a long time. Two sisters, broken and healed, lost and found. When they finally pulled apart, Vivian wiped her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Serafina smiled. "We're family, and family doesn't give up on each other." Vivian nodded. "No, they don't." That evening, after Vivian had left, Serafina sat with Thorn in their bedroom. He held her close. His fingers traced lazy circles on her arm. "Are you all right?" he asked. Serafina nodded. "I am. It was hard, but it was good." Thorn kissed her hair. "I'm proud of you." Serafina looked up at him. "For what?" "For choosing to forgive," Thorn said. "It takes strength to do that." Serafina smiled. "I learned from you." Thorn shook his head. "No, that was all you." Serafina's eyes filled with tears, but they were happy tears. "I love you," she whispered. Thorn cupped her face. "I love you too, more than anything." And he kissed her. Later that night, Serafina stood at the window. She looked out at the gardens. The moon was bright. The stars were scattered across the sky. She thought about everything that had happened, about the pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak, but also about the healing, the love, the forgiveness. She thought about the woman she had been and the woman she had become. And she realized something. She was not the same person who had sat in that church 5 years ago. That woman had been afraid, broken, lost. But this woman, the woman she was now, was strong, brave, whole. And she had Thorn to thank for that. Not because he had saved her, but because he had believed in her. He had shown her that she was worth fighting for, and that had made all the difference. Thorn came up behind her. He wrapped his arms around her waist. He rested his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Serafina smiled. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am." Thorn kissed her neck. "I'm the lucky one." Serafina turned in his arms. She looked up at him. "No, we're both lucky." Thorn's eyes softened. "I suppose you're right." They stood there in the moonlight, holding each other, as the world outside continued to turn. And Serafina knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. Because that was what love was. Not perfect, not easy, but worth fighting for. Always. Serafina's story was not a fairy tale. It was not a perfect romance with no pain. It was real. She had been hurt. She had been betrayed. She had been broken. But she had also healed. She had also loved. She had also found happiness. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not the mistakes of the past, but the choices of the present, and the hope for the future. Serafina had chosen to forgive. She had chosen to love. She had chosen to move forward. And because of that, she had found a life worth living. A life filled with laughter, with joy, with family. A life that 5 years ago she never thought she could have. But she had it now, and she would never let it go.